Hey, Nelly.
Hey, okay, so far so good. Thank you for the session. Thank you for highlighting why it's important to participate in this experience. I mean, it's not really an experience; it's like the real thing that's going on. And what I would like to do, like maybe before jumping onto the list of questions that everyone provided, is to ask them if they had any question regarding the materials that just got shared, if they wanted to see something that they didn't see before we jump into the questions. I'm not sure how do they have to raise their hands to ask questions, or how does it work? Or we just go to the Q&A tab and then type in the questions?
It could be either. They can type it in the general chat. They can type it in the Q&A. If they'd like to come on stage, they could raise their hand.
Okay.
And then we can have them in. But
I don't know, Seth, Jamal, Fabrice, Guy, if you have like any question, Bayo. And I feel like for the list of questions that we're gonna go, I'm gonna look. I will ask Fabrice to take the mic since he gathered them from the different chapters. So it seems that it was clear for everyone. No questions, or they are being shy.
Yeah, Nelly, do you have any questions? I know we've talked quite a bit, but after you have had a chance to see JK's presentation, my presentation. Yeah.
Yeah, so my question would be along the fact that I know you guys are baking on Tezos, but not only on Tezos. And as you are trying to kind of, as you mentioned, optimize the rewards for every single validator or every single delegate, the person that delegates to you. And at the same time, you are trying to get really involved with the governance. So it means that you have to spare a lot of time to get to know like what are the upcoming changes on the protocol that you have to vote on. Like how do you proceed? Like how do you allocate your time between like different projects? Because we are in Africa, and I know that if we start going into that venture of baking for Tezos, as I mentioned, Shime in Nigeria is also doing experiment with Bitcoin, and I'm sure many of us will want to dive into other protocols and do the same. So how do you allocate your time efficiently between all those protocols? And then how do you go along like voting yes or no on an update?
Yeah, I could take this one, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like we have been pretty passive on Tezos governance participation. I don't want to make it sound like we're like we've contributed to the PRs of it. Like the protocol team and some of the core contributors have been doing a splendid job, quite honestly. Not only after actually drafting up the governance, but they've reached out to us personally to actually talk about what to ask us to vote on certain things. So. But to get to your question about like how do we split time, it's not easy. There's no straight answer. We're trying to solve that answer by actually operating. And once we do find an answer, we'll definitely share that. But at least so far, we're still in the stages of trying to manage this trying to figure out a better way of managing this. But I will recommend though, one thing that has been helpful is to try to definitely set up allies. Try to set up relationships not only with the core protocol teams, but also with some people, community members who are very focused on a single protocol. So as an example, if you mentioned one of your colleagues here, or one of your colleagues here, you could sort of choose to focus on Tezos, where your colleague chooses to focus on a different protocol, and you keep sharing notes. Okay. And this is a very symbiotic, synergistic way of trying to growing together. At least so far, it's very, very difficult to keep track of multiple protocols. And I don't think it's a fault of the bakers or community members. The fact is, all these different protocol teams have been consistently trying to reinvent the wheel I don't fault them for that, but at the same time, it also means that they're just adding on like a whole new learning stack every single time. For every single protocol, it's like a whole new stack that you need to learn. We're gonna try to solve that. Like we're trying to solve that. But until then, I don't have a straight answer for you, honestly.
Yeah, just to add on to that, right? It's JK said it's not easy. It's hopefully just more communication. It will help, right? The more that we communicate, then more information we can share with each other, and then the more we can support and right, not invent the wheel. If Stakefish has been able to figure some things out, and then let's say like a validator in Europe or Africa has questions, then right, just by communicating, then we can help answer them. So.
Okay. And I know we don't have Chris to talk about infrastructure, but even having a look at the list of questions, I know a lot of them will relate to those. Can any of you kind of share like a few words about what's your current infrastructure stack look like? No.
Yeah, so I guess you have the document for us, right? You just kind of go through that.
Yes.
The Tezos Africa chapters questions. Are there any other questions that maybe some people might have had?
There's a good one on the chat, actually.
If nodes in Africa, if each of the nodes are in Africa, do you still remain a geographical location on the map if you adopt a cloud system? Maybe we could use like the example of like cloud service provider decentralization and then geographic decentralization, I guess, and then those can kind of be tied in hand. And maybe you can add some JK, but like I would say that there's varying levels of decentralization when people kind of refer to validated decentralization. So there's like decentralization from a perspective of like where you are located. And then there's also decentralization from a perspective of which cloud service provider you use. And then there's also decentralization from a perspective of like who literally owns what. And I think Denis, one of our infrastructure coworkers, can also add to this. But just quickly, I will say that right, anywhere in the world you can be, and then you can just like link to like a cloud service provider somewhere else. And then, right, if everyone's using that cloud service provider, then maybe that's not the best. But if there's, for example, a cloud service provider in Africa that you use that, then that is contributing to decentralization. Let me hand the mic to Denis. Hey, Denis.
Hi there. You hear me well?
Yep.
Oh, hi. So I'm going to address this question. And so I work for Stakefish, and I'm some sort of SRE, and I work with the infrastructure as well. So regarding this question about decentralization, it's very interesting question, because a lot of people, they deploy to the cloud, but it doesn't really contribute to the decentralization because there is like in technical aspects, there could be issues like at Amazon. I can quite frequently, like maybe twice a year, it goes down, and it's not fun. There is in terms of law, it would be helpful to give it more better spread. So, for instance, I'm quite enthusiastic about blockchains, and I run a few blockchains at home. So I live in Canada, and I basically expose SEA, if you are aware of it. So I host SEO, how do you call it? Space provider. And also I host Ethereum node, so it all basically helps the decentralization. So don't be shy. You can always host from home, and it's way better. The most important is to have hardware that you can have running like 24/7. And what else? And also you need to make sure that you have a good bandwidth. So like it doesn't require a lot of bandwidth, but it still needs to have a reliable connection with the internet. Once you have it, you can do this, and that's it.
I guess. Yeah, just to add to that, Denis, right? There's like a lot of different kind of options that they have. There's like what you said, like hosting it at home, like, and then there's like the bare metal, or you have like a data center that you might own, and then there's like the cloud service providers that you can connect to. I think that if there are very popular cloud service providers in Africa, that is kind of gets like a Tezos Africa Baker in Africa to connect to, that is meaningfully right separate from just like an AWS in Western Europe or somewhere close, or that right, continuing to add those is supportive. So yeah, thanks so much, Denis. I'm gonna invite Nelly back up.
Yes, thank you, Denis, and it was interesting to listen to Denis, and the fact that I like the fact that Daniel, you explained the 3 layers of decentralization, right? And Denis strengthened the fact that she was kind of doing it at home, but then she mentioned you need to have a bandwidth, you need to have stable electricity, and I'm like, we are in Africa, so forget about that. Like for 75% of Africa, we are living in the night. We are living in the darkness. So we are subject to electricity shortages, like very often. The bandwidth is critical. So, and in that sense, like when we started this venture, and Nigeria was the first one to start, we were thinking that decentralization in terms of location was kind of the most important. But lastly, when we were to vote with the Cameroon, when Cameroon, Tezos Baker were to vote the last upgrade in Tezos, and then they voted no, whereas everyone else voted yes. And then when they explained their reason, because it was about shortening the time to between 2 blocks from 1 minute to 30 seconds, and they were saying, Jamal was saying, yes, but no, I mean, for me already I have a 30-second lag behind, every single block. So if you shorten to 30 seconds, I might not be able to kind of even bake 1 block efficiently. And everyone jumped on him, because as of now, the majority of bakers and the communities are outside. So they were like, why should we listen to that? Just find a good bandwidth, just find no, but if we want Africa to be part of it, we need to also be aware of those limitations. And we cannot go along and build those telecom infrastructure for our governments. We cannot do that. So, and that's also why now I lobby for, even if we don't have the 3 layers of decentralization right now, only having this layer in terms of who is behind the node is helpful. Because every single time we're going to take the time to study what is proposed. We're going to take the time to see, is it relevant to us in Africa? How does it contribute to a better social impact to our society, our community? So, and that's also why now I'm not so focused about finding the perfect cloud service provider in Africa and everything. I just want to have as many African baking nodes as possible, even if it's only about the people behind. And then we move to layer 2 about the location and about diversification of the cloud provider.
Yeah, JK, maybe I think that's a really great question about the white label solutions that can be kind of like that intermediate step to that Right.
I definitely don't want to actually I think dive into white label solution, quite honestly. Like I really want to,
Okay.
I do hear what Nelly is saying, right? Like it's very, very this is a real issue. But also at the same time, this is the reason why Tezos designed it the way it's designed. Thankfully, there's no slashing, right? Like there's no concept of slashing because you're down or you're not always connected 100%. I think a lot of, so you bring up I just wanted to expand on 2 points that you mentioned. One is reducing block times is not the solution to everything. Like you just brought up exactly the reason why focus on block time is just the dumbest thing ever, because it means the future of decentralization is gone. There's physical limitations on what is possible and what is not possible, and just that is just being blind to the realities of the world right now. And then second of all, it might not have been intentional, but thankfully on Tezos there's no slashing. Meaning, really, I think while yes, you might not be able to optimize for the best baker, but you can still technically run a baker in Africa. While it's not fully connected and you won't get the best staking rewards, but you are still contributing by actually saying hey, there's a baker that is actually securing the network in Africa. While it's not going to be 100% aligned, it is still voting and endorsing whenever it can. And I don't want anyone's money to be on the line, for example. But I think these are sort of stuff that if you talk with the Tezos Foundation, I think they'll be willing to help these stuff out. These are the stuff that I think people attending this should try to, bring to the foundation and say, highlight the importance of this and say hey, you guys should help some of our bakers that we're going to run in Africa here. They might not have the best uptime, but it's going to be very critical for the decentralization of the protocol. So, Nelly, I really hear you, but I do think also at the same time, Tezos might be in a really good position to actually have bakers not only run by operators in Africa, but actually have physical location there.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting because it reminds me of the I don't know if you guys remember the huge NotPetya attack a couple of years ago, where it was literally because there was this decentralized node for one of the mayors, this large shipping company's servers was located literally in Africa, and it took down the entire European server system. And then because we had that infrastructure separated or outside that, they were able to literally recreate everything. So it just shows you having the ability, as JK said, to be able to secure the network beyond is important for the network itself, and as well like some of the security implications that we've seen in the real world.
Can we try to address? I think one of the questions on chat. I think that was a pretty good one on what it means for us to have a conservative approach to I mean, I could start right off a bit about what we mean by conservative, and it's largely in two parts. One is having guarded access to different credentials, and this is something that our head of infrastructure is very, very keen on. Making sure that even within a team, right, while people can have all access to maybe G Suite or share AWS logins, but you definitely don't want everyone to have the same access to sort of this the keys, some of the address keys, some of the validator keys. You don't want everyone to access that. So making sure that you have full control over who has access to what is very, very critical. And really, it's really our head of infrastructure who has really hit hard on that and has proven that it does definitely work within our project. I mean, can't you trust everyone in your team? I mean, yes, ideally, but at the same time, you just still want to be on guard here, because we're dealing with a key that secures the network. You don't want to be you can't be too careful with it. There's no such thing as being too careful with it. Was what I was going to say. But the other part of this also is that we're not we don't run active backups. What that means is, so like a lot of teams do like to have one key that does all the validator operations, and then have another backup of that, a copy of that, sitting on another server just ready to kick in case the main one goes down. And this is actually like at the core of every single double signing event, every single infrastructure validator fiasco that has happened so far, not only in Tezos but like everywhere else. So like by conservative we mean like we literally do not have an active setup. What we choose to do is actually say like, hey, we'd rather have like a 30-minute downtime, an hour downtime, and then try to take very careful steps to make sure that our main one is totally dead before we actually bring up manually a backup. And the trade-offs are very clear. Like trying to optimize for uptime does not make any sense because that being down a bit is not going to lead you to lose a ton of staking rewards. But double signing, double endorsing, getting slash on the networks as an example, are going to kill your staking rewards. So the trade-offs just doesn't make sense. So hopefully that answers that question.
There was another question that said a corporate Baker business profile template. Are you familiar with what that might be?
I'm not entirely familiar with what the template would look like, but I think I can go a bit into sort of what the relationship with I think institutional would look like. So right now in the market, there's only, I think, perhaps, okay, so like I'll categorize into three large entities institutionals that exist out in the market today. One is going to be exchanges. The second are going to be the wallets, and the third are going to be the funds. But there aren't a ton of funds out there, to be quite honest, at least on Tezos these days, just because most of them already have a Baker that they have close relations with. But exchanges and wallets, right? They're consistently looking for new partners to stake their Tezos. So the first, like, there's going to be a few back and forth of calls trying to determine the commissions, because most of these wallets, exchanges, and funds would like definitely lower fees. They'll try to negotiate for some sort of fee discounts. So there's going to be a ton of discussions around that. But after a few back and forth, there will be a contract that is set up. Like a terms of service contract, some sort of contract in place, and then the basic delegation, sort of the corporate, like the institutional sort of relationship begins then. But it doesn't end there, because you also need to provide some reporting systems. A lot of the institutionals would require or ask for these Excel sheet style reportings on how much they've earned, how much fees we've charged. They all need this for their internal reporting or audits. It's quite a hassle, but most of these do require those. So just a heads up on the fact that those will be required when engaging institutional clients. Hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome. I think Fabrice wanted to come up on stage for the questions. Is this the document that you shared, Nelly?
Yes, it is.
Got it. Yeah, so I think we could answer most of these. If we can't get to all of these questions, we can provide some written answers and then provide them to you, Nelly, so we can distribute as well.
Okay. And JK, sorry, Daniel, I think the corporate Baker question was kind of two ways, not only about institutional delegates, but also about did you ever experience a corporate institution coming to you and say, I want to start baking. So what do you tell them? What do you give them as a support? Because we saw that in France, for example, we have the utilities company, we have Ubisoft that started to bake. So we were wondering, is there a way to convince those to onboard? What can we tell those kind of profile, to get to it? What do they benefit? How do you see about it? Do you have any first-hand experience on that?
Yeah, frankly, we don't. We don't have.
Okay.
We're mostly focused on sort of the crypto-friendly people, like meaning like people who do know crypto. Like we have not come across a ton of corporates. And frankly, like while I don't want to discount the efforts that have gone into it, like I do also like at least secondhandly did hear that a lot of the corporates, when they do enter into the validator space, it's a bit hands-off. Like they do take a more hands-off approach, and so that's something only secondhand that I've heard that I think I could contribute. But otherwise, like we don't have direct sort of first-hand experience with corporate.
Okay. Maybe Daniel, we can, while waiting for Fabrice share, maybe you could share the screen with the questions, the documents.
Sure. Yeah, I could share the screen. Let me open this up. Can you see the questions?
Yes.
Cool. So there are some of these questions that JK and I specifically can't answer. Perhaps Denis, and then we can also provide answers through one of our infrastructure head as well. But are there any specific, I guess, high priority ones, Nelly, that you thought we can kind of go through, or should we just kind of walk through these?
So where you put the X is the question you cannot answer?
Not at the moment, not specifically for Tezos. I think for like more general infrastructure questions, Denis is also someone who can provide answers to that as well.
Yes, I mean, I think like those kind of, it could also be answered like generally. For Tezos, before we jump into that, because I see like a question that Adebayo is asking from Nigeria, what is the ideal returns on investment? I think the question I've been hearing a lot from these guys is at how many holes do you need to kind of start breaking even? And I think it's like a difficult question to answer because it can depend on the hardware that you have, like the cloud cost and everything. But this is kind of like a way for them to set up like a goal so as to go out there, and even when talking to the foundation and trying to convince people to delegate to them. So this is one of the questions that they've been asking me a lot.
Yeah, I think something to add there is that when I was talking to the Tezos Foundation, what they were excited about was being able to get more attention from retail. So to be able to support like this geographic decentralization narrative, and then have those delegations come to you guys. So and as an example, instead of having too much emphasis and reliance on a foundation for the majority of your delegation, maybe less favorable than being able to get the support from the foundation and other validators like us to signal interest from the retail community to support and delegate to these, to like, let's say Tezos African bakers. I think that would be, right. Cause like, as JK had said, right, the strength of, I would say, or let's say the strength and freedom that a validator can have is, right, being able to source retail delegation instead of like having like some institution or a foundation limit the freedom of I guess expression of like what you're comfortable voting on yes or no on, for example.
Okay. So maybe Daniel, let's just go through the questions, and then maybe some we just answer with yes or no, and then
Yeah, it looks like the first question JK touched on a bit, right? Should security management be outsourced or integrated? At least like with JK had said, like probably, and like the conservative approach is making sure that it is right held close to the chest instead of allowing some third party or semi-trusted actor to like have their hands on your keys, for example. So I think that, right, conservative is probably safer, but also as JK had mentioned, right, the slashing is less of a risk for Tezos. It looks like Kevin Ikono has a question. Nelly, do you mind if I bring him onto the stage?
No, I don't.
Okay. Hey, Kevin.
Hey all, I'm Kevin from Tezos Cameroon, and my question is about first I want to thank about the good presentation you did. So for me, I know we have too many questions, but I just have one in the list that is very important for me because now Cameroon Baker is working well. So I have one big. I want to know how which reward payment method you can recommend to us, and how to can I have a very good some more explanation about that, and how you do to pay the reward. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I could dive into a bit about of our processes. So we don't. So like the payouts for us, like obviously we need the snapshots to take place, right? We can't pay before snapshots. So right after the snapshots are made and baked, we don't wait for the undying until rewards are unfrozen. Like it's okay if they're frozen and they're gonna come to us. Like we still do pay before they're unfrozen. So we do save our stakers a bit of time there. The reason is like there's a lag, yes, about 4 weeks. But at the end of the day, like those Tezos that are still like unfreezing, like are gonna come to our Baker node first. So anyways, we could keep them and we could still pay it out. Like it's a liability, but at the same time, it's pretty safe. That's the reason why we chose to do this payment method, this reward payment method. If you don't want to pay in advance, of course, you could wait for the unfreezing period. I really don't think it would make a big of an issue, but I think if you I'm just saying from the baker's point of view, I think it's okay. You're relatively hedged on risks, even if you do pay out before rewards are fully unfrozen. And then we typically send all of the rewards that need to be paid. So we run an archive node. We do calculations on how much we need to pay out for each delegator. And then we send the amount that we need to pay out into a separate account that we label into stakefish payout address or something like that. And then from there, we pay to the individual addresses the amount that we owe each of them. So this is our method of making the payments.
Hello.
Yep, I hear you.
Oh la la. Sorry, I don't get you right now because I don't know.
Oh no.
Hello. You get me?
We hear you.
Hello.
Uh-oh.
Oh la la. Sorry,
Daniel,
it's connection issue.
Yeah, we can hear you, Kevin.
I think if Kevin has connection issue, I think he could check out the recording to get the answers. So we should just type that out, I think.
Yep. Looks like Nelly had to step away. I don't know. We have a few more minutes scheduled, but or we might have gone a little bit over. But maybe to also add on to that with what JK said is maybe there like the relationship that the validator has with the delegators, maybe that can influence how the payouts are done, right? Was there ever a conversation, or were there like ever kind of questions asked from the Tezos community that validates to us like kind of what payment methods they wanted? Or has this kind of been just decided from top down as you've seen in other places?
It's so I think before we did the unfrozen, like paying up before rewards are unfrozen, like there was only one or two other bakers doing it. I just don't think bakers were doing that too much. I don't think the community required like ask for anything in particular, but we've sort of I think gotten the hint from like how mining pools operate and seeing that like probably this is probably a nice way for our delegators. And I don't want to say these are the only ways of doing payouts. There's definitely a lot of ways you could be innovative, you could be different. I do want to encourage different payout schemes, but as long as they're transparent, right? Please be transparent, but at the same time, like trying to experiment with different payout schemes is, I think, should be encouraged.
Yep, and it looks like that also answers the question of like what someone asked in the document, like what's the waiting period for the delegators to get the reward payouts. And I also think for like Kevin's question is that you have the ability to choose, right, and be flexible, and then provide like whatever type of service, maybe more quality service, or like customized and one-on-one type of service, depending on what you want. So, JK, do you want to? It looks like Nelly had to step away, but do you want to see like some of these other questions that we could kind of?
I think there's one other person who wanted to, who raised their hand. So like, I think we could take that one.
Hello.
Hello, it's Japan.
Is that?
We are together, right?
Kevin, were you able to hear the answer to the question? Or maybe, do you want to do a TLDR?
So I lose the internet. So I don't know if you can adjust. If I get you well, you say that it's better for us to pay every 4 weeks when our reward is unfrozen. That is what you say.
So there's just two choices: either pay after it's unfrozen or before it's unfrozen. I think either is fine. Really, it really shouldn't matter as long as you're transparent about it. At least so far, like I'm just saying from our experience, there are like the way we've paid out, no delegators, no community members, no institutions had any real criticisms over it. And so I don't think that would be an issue, but it's just being transparent part. I think that's important. Just letting people know, making sure that it's very, very clear that like about when the payouts occur and how frequent they occur. That's the most important part.
Okay, so another question, and now how do you define the fees you take? So I see you have 8%.
Yeah.
How do you define it?
Yeah, this is a great question. So there's no golden answer, quite honestly. That's what I come to. But the one thing I did try to make in the initial sort of calculations when we set it up for Tezos is that we tried to at least cover our infra costs, our server cost, and then plus at least about like 15 to I think 20 hours. No, wait, that's too much. Like I did 10 to 15 hours of our infrastructure person's time, basically. That's sort of the calculation on like how on a monthly basis, like how much costs I was thinking and how much should be at least recovered every month. So like, it's easy to calculate like how much you want to target, right? I mean, first you go from like how much you can actually, how many rolls that you could actually put up. Then you could determine how much stake you could actually get, and then calculate the staking rewards, and then multiply and then compare that with the cost you need to cover. And then I think adding about like probably like a 30 to 50% margin on top of that will be the best way then to compare to the then compare to like the revenues and then determine a commission on that. Does that make the formula a bit clear? I hope I didn't lose you there.
Okay.
Maybe a bit. So like basically try to make sure you could cover your infrastructure cost plus calculate like your labor costs for a month, and then add on a bit of a margin. So like at least from 30 to 50% margin, I think is ideal. And then do the calculation on the other end, and try to say like what percentage of commission do you need to charge to actually get to that dollar amount.
So our baker right now in Africa, we have something like 2 Tezos per cycle. So if you want to do this operation, I think you can say I take 50% of fees, and you cannot be able to support all that. So maybe we have to find more delegator, right, to be able to support it.
100%. Like like the commissions at the end of the day, like doesn't matter if you don't have delegators. So like first course of action, as I mentioned, I think on my presentation, is to like establish yourself and try to get more delegations. I definitely recommend talking with the foundation. That's like the best place I think to start, to think about how you could say like you as a baker can contribute to the ecosystem and getting their help on at least initially bootstrapping.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So I will leave. Thank you. It's all for me.
Thank you.
Cool. I'll remove you, Kevin.
Daniel, I think so. I think we should get around wrapping up. But
Yeah.
there's a ton of questions that I think we could try to talk with Nelly that we'll get to answering through text as much as possible. I just wanted to make sure that like I think people have taken a lot of time to write these questions, and we do want to make sure that we address as much as possible. So for all the questions that that have not been answered, we'll try to provide Nelly with a written response that hopefully she'll share with everyone.
Yeah, so let's we can use the same document that everyone contributed to, and then we can edit that, and then perhaps we can probably get continue those conversations with facilitating the foundation delegation and retail delegation and stuff like that. So I would say that I'm definitely supportive of continued decentralization. So, and I think many others people would. So I think this is like a no-brainer for just being able to coordinate and then help provide people avenues to be successful. Cool. So yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. I think we still have around everyone still in the chat. Thank you all, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you all for participating. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys all soon again. And always feel free to reach out to us if you guys have any follow-up questions. But thank you.
Yep. And thank you, Denny, for stopping by and answering some questions too. Bye.